Hello, my name is Ben.
Hi, my name is Faith.
Welcome to the Too Vague Podcast. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. Dr. Faith Harper, the infamous Dr. Faith Harper. How are you doing today?
I am doing okay. I am kind of like the Marines. I have been up for several hours and I've already worked with a couple clients. So,
Yeah,
uh,
so
yeah.
all your gears are going and all your cylinders are firing.
Unfortunately, I'm a morning person. Like that's embarrassing to admit, but once I leaned in, I realized stuff works better. Yeah.
I am not. And I've been up all night because I didn't want to miss this appointment with you. I've been playing games all night. So if I act a little weird, this is a little warning to you and the audience. It's probably due to lack of sleep.
Okay.
I did get my coffee, so that's good. So, Doctor, do you want me to can I just call you Faith, or would you prefer?
No, please just call me Faith. Some people like it really bothers them and like they feel uncomfortable if they don't, but I prefer just being called Faith.
Okay, because Doctor actually fits in with the whole topic of the word this week, which is Doom, Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
But we don't want to call you Doctor Doom. We don't want to hang that moniker on you, I don't think. So, so Faith, this is almost as bad as pronouns. Gosh darn it. But Faith, thank you for being on the show. You're here to talk about silt stimulation, as I see on your social medias. That's
My what simulation?
silt, CILT.
Oh,
You
yes.
posted the picture of the silt stimulation. That's not what you're talking about.
Well, one of my postdocs is in sexology, and I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old boy, and my Instagram reflects that Venn diagram overlap quite often.
Absolutely. It's between that and cat photos, and that's what I enjoy so much about.
Yes.
So let me ask you just a sort of an introductory question, I guess. What is your history? I only know you being a mentor to Andrew as he's writing his ADHD book and other books for Microcosm Publishing. Where did you start your career as a therapist or an author or both, or, wherever you want to start? Just if you can introduce yourself really quick, who you are and what you do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'm really good at two things. One of them's eating cookies, and nobody pays me for that. And the other is running my house. So I decided to just make money somehow running my mouth. I've always worked in the mental health field. That is something that my parents have done at other points in their lives as well. My father is career military, but has also been a case manager. My mom had been a case manager. That's what we do. We help people.
Uh-huh.
And so started my career. I'm old, in the 90s, doing like case management, working with teen moms, all those other things. Decided to be really cool at some point to maybe make more than like $40,000 a year. So I went back to grad school, and I was really lucky. I was really mentored. I was just like, hey, if I get my master's degree, maybe I can make like 55K. That'd be awesome. And I had a lot of professors like, yeah, you should really do the doctorate. I did not realize that was kind of like they saw something that I was not yet seeing in myself. I had two kids. I was kind of getting back into the field after both kids had gone off to school. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm not taking this on. And they're like, I think you'd really like it. Like one professor's like, you're a nerd. Like you're so one of us. I really have people like, hey, don't forget to take your GREs. Hey, don't forget this. Hey, are you having like you getting the funding that you need and all those other things, and really kind of drug me through that process of believing in myself, because I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I will finish every semester and I cannot quit until I finish the semester. And if I still want to quit at the end, then I'll do that. And I got through every semester of my PhD program by promising myself I could quit at the end. So I continued to work. I'd always worked in community mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and was still working in community mental health. And then about 10 years ago, really wanted to have some more flexibility in my schedule to be a family caretaker. And I enjoyed speaking. I enjoyed writing. I was doing more research. I was getting attached to grants back when we funded things like research. uh,
Don't get me started on that, man.
oh, God. Yeah. And I have my PhD as counselor education and supervision, which is a research and teaching degree designed to elevate the field of counseling. And so I was expected to be able to teach on any topic and create a research study around a social science topic and all those things. It's an interesting and kind of unusual PhD. And so by moving into like private practice, I could do more of those kinds of things and have been doing a lot of that. And I got a postdoc in clinical nutrition, was very interested in that. I got a postdoc in sexology, was very interested in that. I got to study and do more. And then about 2 years ago, I kept having people saying, hey, I love your books, and I should probably get back to like how I ended up writing for Microcosm, but can I work with you? And I'm like, I'm only licensed in Texas. I would love to, but I can't by law. Then I basically converted my practice over to a life coaching practice, which doesn't have the same regulatory. So I have my license is now no longer, it's considered an inactive license, and I can do that. And so I work with people all across the world, and that's been really fun. And I have a practice attorney who help me convert everything over and to do things correctly. And I still make sure to people like, hey, I can like give you some really good ideas about what I think the diagnosis is, but I cannot on paper now give you a diagnosis. But I'll tell you what to go now tell your PCP or whatever.
So you're more of a therapist role is what you're doing for your
and like somatic work, and I'm a yoga teacher. I happen to be a trained doula. I do a lot of like postpartum stuff, all kinds of sort of whatever. I'm like, hey, there seems to be a need here that I'm interested in learning more about that's not being met in the community, and I'd like to do that. And that's kind of where books came from as well. I had done a TEDx San Antonio talk that had done very well. People are like, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, I would love to. I love that part, and I'm really tired of academic writing. It would be nice to sound human again. But, you know, a lot of publishing houses they're really wanting like you to already have 1.3 million followers. Like they don't want to have to do the lead work. They don't want to have to do the development, those kinds of things. And I was kind of anticipating having to self-publish. And then Microcosm were like, well, if you can listen and work with people and are interested in doing development, like we don't see anybody wanting to write what you're wanting to write, and we're into it. And then everyone else was like, I just wanted to write the books that I wanted. I wish this book existed. No one else is writing it. And I can wait for someone to figure it out, or I can figure it out. And that's everything I've written have been like, what would be another way of looking at this that might be a benefit to people?
Yeah.
It came from that place, and it met a need because other people were like, I needed this book too. And I'm like, thank God I wasn't the only one. Yeah.
So was your first book Off Your Brain? Was that the first, or were there other ones? Because that's how I know you.
That was the first one. You know, Microcosm has historically been a mid-list publisher. No one was expecting it to hit the way it did. The idea, like an F-bomb in a title, like this was all 10 years ago, that was not, that's very common now, and I get blamed for it. But like this whole idea that like you can know what you're talking about, but not sound like a pompous ass was weird. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not really a big reader, but I get it now. And I appreciate like how you structure a book. I don't feel lost in the sauce. And some of those things do come from academia. I was taught one idea per sentence, one thought per paragraph, which works so much better for neurodivergent readers.
Right.
So some of those things also helped. And some of it's just been like, it's been really fun to like write about the stuff that I want to write about and look at it from the lens that I'm wanting to look at it through, because nobody else has done that yet. And like, let's be interesting. We don't need another Brene Brown. She exists. She's great. We need new voices. And so people will be like, oh my God, yes, this tattooed foul mouth bitch. Love her. That's my girl, you know.
They're very cool. So how many books have you written with Microcosm then?
Oh God. I don't know. That is a really good and reasonable question, and I would have to go count. Because they're not like, these aren't really big. They're research heavy, but the idea is it's enough. It's enough to get somebody moving on another path or to give them different ideas. It's not supposed to be a textbook. It's supposed to be a public-facing explainer on a topic.
And so how did you get connected with Andrew as far as his book, his writing adventure here?
My understanding was that was something that he wasn't doing as much of, and he had read our publisher Joe Beal's book about running a publishing company as an autistic person, and realized there's value in who I am and what I bring to the table. This is not something for me to overcome, but it's its own skill. And Andrew can answer that better. That's my understanding of it. And Andrew is fantastic at what he does. And so he has, been building more success in that area as well, which is great, because he has the experience of being a teacher, of being a parent, of having lived experience, all these other things.
Absolutely.
And we both get to be friends with and work with and for Joe Beal and Ellie Blue, who are truly friends at this point. And that's lovely. And that is not most people's experiences in publishing or in any kind of business capacity. But we've decided to be our own little ragtag bag of weirdos. Yeah.
And I can appreciate the ragtag band of weirdos idea. So I brought you here to talk about a word because I hear that you are writing a book on the word doom.
Yeah.
What is that book? What is your focus on that topic?
That's so patient. You're like, girl, what the hell is that up?
Well,
what is that about? Yeah.
It's kind of an anxiety sort of thing to me when I think about it.
Like existential.
Yeah.
And the word doom actually came from Ellie Blue. Doom scrolling became a term specifically associated with COVID-19 and people trying to find information and figure out what to do and how to be safe. Do we take the shot? Do we not take the shot? Do we wear the mask? Do we not wear the mask? Do we wash our hands? Do we not wash our hands? And the anxiety of the not knowing and looking for information. And it just became this thing that so many of us were engaging in, of like constantly seeking this feedback, because we can pick up the little computer in our pocket and find stuff. And so she was very interested in this idea of doom scrolling and what was that doing to our mental health, and would I be interested in writing about that? So I looked at the research around, and again, this is all stuff that's really only been studied in the past few years, doom scrolling specifically. And then looking at things like eco-anxiety and political stress. And, eco-anxiety has been around in some forms, especially like since the 70s. The others have become very, very present in the past 10 years. And I think the eco-anxiety has been very spiky with, the rise of AI and things like that.
What do you mean by eco? What is eco-anxiety? Is that like environmental anxiety?
That we're killing ourselves.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, the world is like, we are going to be our own destroyers because we're going to make this planet uninhabitable.
Okay. So like ecological. So, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Ecological anxiety, ecological stress. Eco-terror, you'll see a lot too. So there was a little bit more research around that, because that is something that, philosophers and stuff have talked about before clinicians started studying. And I was curious, what was even just out there? Could I find something to write about? And what I found over and over and over is, by using a word like anxiety or stress, we were diminishing something that's actually much bigger than that. And that, no, it does not meet a textbook definition of anxiety. It does not meet a textbook definition of stress. We call it, there's that existential threat component gets a little closer. But what is it? What are we actually, when we're talking about, what is doom? What are we capturing there? Mm-hmm. And I read and I think and try and come up with, and then my aha moment was oh, this is a form of moral injury. We're experiencing at a global scale moral injury.
Okay.
And I read a lot about trauma, and moral injury is not the same thing, although there is a lot of overlap. And moral injury research mostly comes from the military. A lot of the ways of treating moral injury are somebody in the war theater kills someone, and that is a form of moral injury where you're a perpetrator. But there's also a form of moral injury that we call betrayal-based moral injury. So a perpetrator-based moral injury is what have you done that you can't forgive yourself for? And a betrayal-based injury is what have you experienced that you cannot forgive others for?
Okay.
The people that are supposed to be making good decisions, the people that are supposed to be protecting the populace, the people that we elect solely for that purpose are not doing their jobs.
Right.
And we are experiencing this betrayal-based moral injury of everything's falling apart and we can't fix it. And it's a space of just being like completely frozen and overwhelmed. And that is an existential threat. That is a feeling of doom, of just having it. And like, so what do we do with that? So if I've read books like Adaptive Disclosure, like having killed someone in wartime theater, like what works for that isn't going to work for what the rest of us are going through.
Right.
And ended up going back to my dissertation, which was substantially around liberation psychology. Probably back up and say I am Choctaw. A lot of what I say will make a lot of sense when you realize that I'm indigenous.
Okay.
And so, in liberation psychology, you cannot take the social need out of the individual need. So the book is focused on how liberation psychology and some of these and how some of these things can help us through this process, not just like, here's a breathing exercise for when you want to throw up because the world's on fire. Right. And also, where are opportunities for change? So liberation psychology was founded by a Jesuit priest. His name was Ignacio Matumbaro. Most people do not know him in the U.S. Most of his stuff has not been translated into English. He was in El Salvador. Jesuits, of course, were brilliant. So he was a philosopher and a social psychologist and, a very brilliant person who was also really, like, during the El Salvadoran Civil War, were trying to bring parties together and were advocating for what the indigenous people were going through. And he and a couple of other priests that he worked with and the caretakers at their church in El Salvador, they were murdered. And pictures of their dead bodies were hung on the church door. This man lived what he believed. He was out there doing the work and was killed for it. So I tell that because I'm like not saying in this cutesy, like, yes, bestie, we have to, like, we need to be like going and, protesting more. He was like, it's not even that isn't enough. Yeah, that's a great start. But if somebody is sexually assaulted, they don't just need the individual therapy to process. They need to be able to town square and be heard and believed and to have some kind of recourse for what happens to them. You cannot separate the two. Because he was a social psychologist, and he was punished for that. And so if we brought that back, and so I kind of talked about, like, these were the tenets of liberation psychology, and here's maybe some ways that it could be used. So that was the idea of doom is, like I said, like, what is a new tool? What's a new way of looking at it? What's a way that we haven't tried yet that might give people some relief and some hope? Because a lot of times I can't do anything maybe about what's going on, specifically in the Pentagon today, but I can make sure that I take care of my friend who just got out of the hospital. I can make sure that somebody who needs food gets food. I can make sure that all my rescue cats are taken care of. What can I do at a local level where I do have some agency for change? Yeah. And the more we feel better when we do that. I live in an area west side of San Antonio. It is the Mexican neighborhood, and it is the absolute best place to live and how people take care of each other. Mm-hmm. We had this election, and Trump won and was going to be back into power, and nobody. I came home and somebody had picked me like a bunch of veggies from their garden, and somebody else had made soup, and people started just immediately mutual aid, taking care of each other. I can't fix that, but I can make sure I made soup when I brought you some. I'm talking about it in those kinds of things and how hopeful that made me about a horrible process.
One of the things I realized when I go through my anxiety sort of things, and I know that's not the same thing, but it's the closest thing I can equate to the feeling of doom, mm-hmm. is what can I change? These things may be beyond my control, but there is something that I can do to affect change, and focusing on what I can do and not so much on all the different iterations of what could possibly happen or fear of those things happening. That shouldn't be the focus, because that only adds to the anxiety and adds to, I guess, the doom in this case.
Yeah.
it would add to that. If you don't feel like you have any kind of control, shifting your focus onto the things that can develop and potentially grow into something that could affect change.
Yeah.
That's...
And it matters. Yeah. It's not just and I talk about self-care, sheet masks and bubble baths, also great. Also self-care, like get your teeth cleaned. And then also community care of what can you provide and what are others providing to you, because it's not about charity, it's mutuality. Those things, like, I don't know of another way to save us. That's all I got. And so the book is, I do use one of the things that actually does come from the traditional adaptive disclosure and my model. But I use I pull from all kinds of stuff, because I'm like, okay, if lip psych is the frame, and that's when I'm like, proprioceptive writing. If people don't even understand, how do you unpack it? And this body-based somatic writing might help people. And so I started pulling from all these different spaces of things that I think WeDontHaveAStudio would have been yeah, that kind of works. I'm down with that. Yeah. I wanted to make them proud. Yeah.
That's very interesting. That's really cool. And sounds like you're very passionate about what you do in any kind of writing. The intimacy, that's when I saw the Intimacy Doctor, I didn't think of the books that you wrote. I thought of something different. I know this is deviating a little bit. So the Intimacy Doctor part of it, was that when you were kind of focused on doing things more with sexology stuff, and now you've kind of moved into different territory? Or are you talking about intimacy as a general concept? It's not intimacy as far as sexual intimacy. It is intimacy as far as sharing yourself with other people.
Interpersonal intimacy. Yeah. And I chose intimacy versus being just the sex doctor or whatever for that reason.
Right.
But that work really, and it is still a big part of what I do. And in fact, another book that I'm working right out is I want to reframe BDSM and shadow work and how they interact, because I don't really be nice. I don't fully agree with a lot of how that's being framed.
Okay.
There we go. That's nice. Because it's work that I respect. I just don't necessarily agree. Different ways of looking at things. And so it came from two places. One was, I'm a trauma therapist. I was interested in trauma work when people weren't really doing that, because I've been doing this for a minute. And so that would get people into the realm. Once it affected their sex life, their relationship with their partners, those kinds of things, they would go to therapy for that. And so I needed more substantive training. That's not something that we tend to get in grad school around those topics. So then I could tie it back into the trauma-informed care. And the other thing was, I came from a very sex-positive family. That was not anything to be embarrassed about. It was something to be celebrated. It was something talked about very pragmatically. So very early, even running groups in community mental health, people would have questions about stuff. And I just we would do a sex group, once a month or so, where people would just give me all the questions that they had, and we would talk about them very openly, very frankly, and people loved it. And nobody could find the texts. Where were all the texts in the building? They were all in Faith's room with all the clients.
Right.
Learning about sex. Because I'm not I'm not going to be embarrassed by a question. I don't have hang-ups around that, which is an incredible gift that my family gave me. And that's also a pretty Choctaw way of being. Sex isn't dirty or bad or anything else. And my parents had maybe some different experiences with that in their childhoods, and we're like, yeah, we're not doing that with our kids. And so I grew up in this progressive space, and so I didn't have to unpack my hang-ups. And then I got more training because that's where the need was.
Okay.
I mean, same with clinical nutrition. There was a need there, and I'm like, I'm a nerd. Let's go. And and drove myself to school in Austin for a year, and
Okay. Is Austin as liberal as I've been told it is, as a Texas town?
I would say it's liberal, and I don't mean liberal it's liberal in that very. I'm going to piss off some friends. It's very much a tech bro city.
Okay.
And it's liberal in that more performative way. And I would say I live is keep Austin weird, and the running joke is keep San Antonio lame. We don't want people to know how quietly cool we are. We're sort of like protective of that and protective of our property prices and stuff. I think where I am is far more progressive.
Okay.
Of an area.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And far more livable without making, $300,000 a year in tech. And it's a far more drivable city and all those other things. It is. I mean, but any big city in Texas is. Yeah. Texas is really being held hostage. It's not the red state that people presume. It's a very multicultural,
diverse
area. And and so was San Antonio. San Antonio historically has taken refugees from all over the world, and we have a center for you have a job, you have this. We've been doing things quietly that other people, and I got to even be careful about. So I can talk about that. That's not public knowledge. We'll get in trouble in 2026 if we talk about that. But we have quietly done things properly without making it this big spectacle. And we have lots of work to do, but in terms of if you want a liberal city, Austin, yes. If you want a progressive city, come to San Antonio.
Okay. Yeah, there should be a distinction there, right? It's kind of like people put them into the same bucket, though, I think a lot of times. It's progressive and liberal is kind of the...
Yeah, and I'm more of the burn it to the ground, start all over from the ashes level. Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't worked. Let's try something different. Let's learn. Let's learn from what we had before, but there's a point at which you've got to take those learnings and go a new direction. I really like the term quietly cool. I think I'm going to use that. That's awesome. Quietly cool. We're quietly cool. All right. Well, let's get into the word this week, which is the word doom. I know we were kind of into the word already, but we'll read from my favorite Oxford languages. Do you have a dictionary preference?
I mean, I was raised with the American Heritage Dictionary because that was the one that was banned, and that's how my family rolls. So,
okay. Do you want me to look up the American Heritage? I can do that.
Oh, no. Whatever one you have is fine, because how I operationalize it, I don't have to agree. I wrote the book that I wanted to write. It's fine.
Okay. Well, I just go from the Google, which uses Oxford languages, because they also have the Google Ngram Viewer, which I'm fascinated by, which is a graph of the usage of the word in print over time. But we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So doom, a noun and a verb. We'll start with the noun. Death, destruction, or some other terrible fate. The aircraft was sent crashing to its doom in the water. Mm-hmm. That's a weird sentence. I don't know. I mean, crashing to its doom, whether it's water or not, I don't think it...
Yeah, that feels like a ChatGPT constructed sentence.
That does, really. And then we have archaic in Christian belief, the last judgment. A day like that of the last doom. Then we go to the verb, which is condemn to certain destruction or death. Fuel was spilling out of the damaged wing. Oh, why are you going with aircraft again? The aircraft was doomed. Okay, thanks. Make me afraid of flying, why don't you?
On top of everything else already that we have to be worried about airports, planes, and TAs. It's like, yeah.
I'm taking a business trip coming up, and I'm not going to lie, I don't have any feelings of doom necessarily, but it's like, are there enough people, manning these stations and making it safe for us? Or,
I know that, speaking of, it made international news what the Houston airport looked like. San Antonio, because it's not that big, has been okay. So I don't know. I've just been in fact, I told clients that live in Dallas and Houston, honestly, just park your car at my house and fly out of San Antonio at this point. So you might do better flying out of one airport over the other at this point.
We're talking smaller airports?
I just said San Antonio is cool, so I shouldn't be dissing on our airport, but it's not an airport compared to Houston or Dallas. Yeah.
Right. I would like to think that if you fly out of a smaller airport and into a smaller airport, maybe you're safer? I don't know. Do you think that's a false?
I mean, because we have the Texas governor hates our mayor because it's not who he wanted in office, and we voted in the Filipino lesbian instead. Yeah. So I kind of halfway, again, San Antonio, quietly cool. And so I kind of expected him to maybe like specifically with FAA and TSA here. And that didn't happen. So that's a relief.
Okay.
So there's also the geopolitical components of all that.
I would be going from Tucson to North Carolina, but anyway, let's not go there. I get distracted sometimes. So anyway, the last verb definition, cause to have an unfortunate or an inescapable outcome. Her plan was doomed to failure. So there we go. Origin, Old English and English. Statute, judgment of Germanic origin from the base meaning to put in place, related to do. Oh, that's interesting. And the use in print over time, thanks to the Google Ngram viewer. This is percentages in print, but it looks like the graph, it remains at a higher level, and then it slowly goes down and down and down into the 1900s at its lowest level. And oddly enough, somewhere around, looks like year 2000, around there, it starts climbing and climbing and climbing, and now we're on the upswing here. Do you think, and I like to think about, sometimes creatively, why the increased usage of the word is in print, but why do you think the doom is starting to increase over the 2000s? My mind goes to social media and that whole electronic. It's a lot easier to get all that information now through computers, and you get exposed to a lot more than you used to back in the 70s and 80s and even 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So with that greater exposure and greater noise, I would say too, because there's a lot of social noise that occurs, opinions, bots, AI stuff now. That's probably an explanation for why there's more doom.
Yeah, I think linguistically become cool again, because doom scrolling is a fun term. And, especially in 2020, we called it Zoom, Gloom, and Doom, because it rhymed, which was even better. And I think that is part of it, sort of the linguistic tricks of it. But,
yeah.
One of the things you mentioned was like, it started getting really, really high. Like it was the 21st century. Well, what happened in 2001? Especially, I would say, for Gen X and older millennials, like we have lived through now all these things that we don't like. It's feeling like it's not getting better.
Right.
And again, I'm Gen X, so of course I think the 90s were amazing.
Right.
I remember being so mad that the Flaming Lips was $8 a ticket. How dare you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Someone told me that they were going to a show and they were paying $400 to get tickets for two people, and it's like, what?
And you're like, American dollars? Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Go to a small club for one.
But even then, it's still not going to be I saw the Nixons and Flaming Lips and Echo and the Bunnymen for $6. So right now we're just doomed because now if you want it, you got to go to Scotland, you got to see Echo at the Edinburgh Festival. This is not a thing that's available in the same way.
Echo and the Bunnymen is one of my favorites. Back in the 80s, the cool out of high school girl was the one who introduced me to Echo and the Bunnymen. And I was like, oh, wow, these guys are awesome. I'm just such a big fan. I did actually see them in concert in Tucson probably about 15 years ago. They got back together again and started doing their thing.
Gen Z loves them because they're the spiritual children of Gen X. Like, my nephews are super into Echo. One of my nephews is a Twitch streamer, and so introducing his fans to my music he's like, everybody's super into Concrete Blonde now. I'm like, thanks, I appreciate that. So, but we had. And I'm being very cranky, like middle-aged lady about it. But there seems to but it's also a running joke that we're a generation that sort of checked out by the mid-aughts, because you could be poor but still be happy, and you could have an artistic life, and you didn't have to be a sellout. You didn't have to pay an oxygen rental service. I mean, and I think that we've seen incredible catastrophes starting in this century, and they're not getting better. It's getting worse. I mean, especially the past 10 years, but honestly, since from 9/11 on, it's really felt like that's it. That's as good as it was going to be. And I don't want that to be true. And I wouldn't be in this field if I thought that that was true. I would just go be an angry philosopher. But that is the feeling that we're fighting. Yeah.
Or as some people would call them, philosophers. That's going a little too far. Angry philosophers. No, they're just philosophers. That's what they are.
Germanic.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a Germanic term. Is it Justothian specifically? It cares how far back it goes, but yes, that's about it. And that the moral injury component of doom and what I'm how I'm operationalizing doom, it's different from trauma. We're not having a re-experiencing. We're not like reliving something that happened in the past. We're living through something happening currently.
Right. It's a different frame of reference.
Like we all kind of wake up and you're like, I don't want to pick up my phone. I don't want to, oh God damn. Okay. That's what it feels like. And so I think, yeah, besides the word being like having sort of its uptick in usage, it fits.
The thing that I equate with doom in the 80s was the Cold War. There was always this fear. It's like nuclear war, and they had all those things where, was it called The Morning After or something, where it was like, it was something about nuclear annihilation and stuff that they had on television.
Oh, was that the 28 days, 28 years? Was that series?
Yeah, it wasn't a series. It was in the 80s. It was all the Cold War kind of.
Yes, and Red Dawn and all, yeah.
Yeah, about here's what's happening with nuclear war and being attacked and the Russian scare and stuff.
And you're going to go duck under your desk. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
cool.
Right. And then everything will be, but that's the closest thing that I think I could equate to feelings of that kind of doom when I was in my younger age, was kind of that whole nuclear annihilation thing. But since then, I mean, I don't think maybe it's just, I don't know. I don't know if there's any benefit for me analyzing why I don't feel doom, but I do feel anxiety. And I don't think, like you said, they're not the same. Maybe anxiety is more of a personal sort of thing, whereas doom is more like the planet, our society. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I do, like, I remember those time periods. I am old enough to remember being like terrified of nuclear war. But I mean, a couple of things there is, I did not, and maybe I should have, but I was pretty young. I did not feel a distrust in leadership, and I did not get a sense of distrust in leadership from my parents. They were very progressive, very politically active. And so they felt like there was work to be done, but it didn't. I don't know that they really were like worried about it in maybe the same way we're worried about weather patterns caused by AI data centers and stuff. That we're seeing this with some immediacy, and we're not seeing a level of response. Another thing, and my parents were pretty great about, like, you can watch whatever you want, but we're going to like participate in this with you. You can't just watch this and come to your own conclusions. We're going to have a discussion.
Yeah.
No wonder that I'm an academic now. And so so we watched those movies and we would talk about things, and that was, that's meant to be scary. But also one of the movies that I remember my dad and I watching in the 80s that was incredibly hopeful. Most people haven't heard of it. You might, because you're a fellow old, but there was a movie called Amazing Grace and Chuck. Have you even heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Anybody, if y'all can find this movie, it's going to be very dated, but it was about how one little boy and he caught the interest of an NBA player, and how they changed the world and around nuclear power. It was an incredibly hopeful story about children affecting change.
Huh.
And it was an incredibly hopeful story. Like, you get attention to the right people, you can capacity build. So there was hopeful narratives around it as well. And that was a good balance, I think, for a lot of us, I hope. And if anyone's needing a hopeful narrative about nuclear war now that we just fired 3 Mile Island, all back is completely back up just for AI use. Amazing Grace and Chuck I hope it still holds, because I remember my dad and I both having a really good positive response to that. And that made me feel like, oh, I can do stuff.
So this is like an independent film or an art film, or was it something that was more mainstream or?
I should probably also clarify. So my dad was active duty military, and the time we saw it, we were ironically, I did not know this at the time. This has been declassified, and they're no longer there. But we were in Germany, and he was sitting on nukes. My dad was a medical logistician, but they had nuclear weapons on the military base in Pirmasens, Germany. I did not understand that's why we lived less than 5 kilometers from the border of France, and we did not live on base. I did not know those things, and so you also meant you got what you got in terms of media. So it was the AFI's run movie house and video store, and so they had it, and we would just go like rent whatever we could rent. You couldn't even like buy VHS tapes at that time. They were like, it was like $100. Like you rented stuff,
Right,
or you
right.
might be able to watch something. Yeah. And we would we went and watched movies in German and all those other things as well. But so we saw it because AFI's had it in the video store at the base in Pirmasens, Germany.
I'll take a look at that because a hopeful movie is what I need right about now.
Yeah.
Which would be different than, I guess, the movie that Andrew and I watched last week, Strange Brew, is kind of a hopeful movie too. No, it's not.
No.
it's just goofy.
But you know what? That's also hopeful. And something can be kind of dark and also still be incredibly hopeful because it's realistic. And I just was delighted as a kid seeing a kid like, wait, you got people's attention and you made them stop making bombs? We can do that. And, when we came back stateside and I was back in the U.S. and going to high school in Central California, I started the first environmental club because, we can do that.
Yeah.
I did not manage to get rid of any nuclear bombs, but we planted trees, and did a windbreak at the track. Like, those trees are still there last time I went to go back and to visit. So we can still affect change. We can still do good things.
Right, exactly. That all matters as far as current, and then also to motivate you to do bigger and better things, I think. Yeah, it also serves as motivation doing a lot of that stuff. We'll wrap it up with video games because I need to talk about video. Are you a video game person? Probably not.
I am pro anything like that that's creative and fun and dorky, but I am not. I'm saying that as I dig that people like video games. I dig that people like role play, tabletop, all that stuff. That is not my area.
Okay.
I want a big thick book and a pile of cats, and quiet is my leisure space.
That's your video game right there. A pile of cats and a pile of books. There you go.
Yes.
I got a review code for a game this week, and I don't know if this is is there an age limit on people who experience Doom? Do you think it gets worse as you get older, or do you think it gets better?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe it depends on how much attention we're paying, and honestly, I would say it's like the lives that we're living and the comforts that we have. Like, there's plenty of people that bend in ways to avoid what most of us are experiencing, and I don't know how, but I think that it can get better because as we gain wisdom around these experiences of being like, oh we did that in the 80s, we did that again in the aughts, and these are some lessons learned and that kind of stuff. I think it's easy to but I think that's why we have a rise in things like Christofascism, which Christ is like, keep me out of it, but it's this sense of security around. It's creating a belief system that is going to protect you when we need to fix this ourselves.
Yeah. Also, it's like social media, but I think a media is designed to keep you in a state a lot of times that is fear, because it brings people back to it. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to continue to tune into blah 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 because I need to be.
The money is made in the attention economy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not doom. When people say doom scrolling, I'd like to make the distinction between doom scrolling and going down a rabbit hole, because they're similar. I go down cat rabbit holes, and I don't think there's doom associated with that. I go down video game rabbit holes, and I'm not sure that that's associated with that. But I mean, there is kind of a similarity there. It's a lot easier to be pulled by feelings in social media and electronic activities. It's a lot easier
That
now.
actually, I think we should probably clarify that for people that are listening in right now, like an intellectual, like a rabbit hole. We're talking about like an intellectual pursuit of like, hey, I think it's really interesting. How does that work? And reading on that in some kind of way is great. We're talking about like that you're just sitting there like you're either like seeking something that's going to like help you figure out what you need to do when the answer is we don't know. Right. Or you're looking for something that's going to distract you or make you feel better in general. And it's not this like, oh, I wonder what is the research on that? And I should see what studies are publicly available. And I want to go look at the pictures, is a different experience than sort of the aimless wandering through the bowels of culture.
Remember that thing we had back in the 80s? It was critical thinking. Remember that?
I don't think we have that in.
Boy, that was such a cool thing. I remember from the 80s. Critical thinking, going to the library, that kind of stuff. Let me get back to the game. So the reason I kind of asked about the age, and this is going to be a weird sort of like, how does this connect with Doom? It probably doesn't that much, but it is a game called The Ultimate Grandma Simulator. I sent you a little link to the trailer. Did you have a chance to look at that or no?
Oh, no, I had clients starting to get 7 a.m. this morning. I saw it, but I was just like, cool. But I didn't even try.
The Ultimate Grandma Simulator, developed by Circo and Plum.2, published by a studio called WeDontHaveAStudio. That's an interesting publisher name. We don't have a studio.
It's my basement fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's DIY, man. That's all you need to call your studio is DIY. And it's basically, you're a grandma. You can't use up all your energy. And you also have to monitor your breathing. Mm-hmm. And you can't just breathe all the time because then you'll pass out. And you have to avoid all the things in your environment. You fall down a lot. You put one foot ahead of the other. So the whole story is you're trying to find I think it's grandson, Tommy. And sorry, guys, not fun.
Because my first job is like, how could we use that to like be helpful for people? Is like, well, what happens if you exercise? What happens if you eat different? What happens if you do occupational therapy?
Right. There is none of that.
I'm in my 50s.
Yeah.
But I'm like a yoga teacher. I can execute a slut drop better now than I could in my 20s. Come on, Grandma, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like you start in your house, and then there's one of those. One of the things you have to avoid is the Roomba that's going around. If anything hits you, then you just tumble and die, and then you spawn at your other spawn point. The graphics very, very stencily looking graphics, really cute from that standpoint. There are some camera problems. I can see where it can be annoying. At the end, there's a boss fight, and you get the ability to reflect things, which seems kind of like against the whole grandma simulator kind of idea. It's like, wait a second, you're parrying. First, it makes sense because you can't overuse your energy and overexert yourself, and you get, things bumping into you and you fall down, and that all makes sense. Breathing also makes sense, but parrying is just silly. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of challenging. I played it a little bit on my Steam Deck. It doesn't work very well on the Steam Deck, so I played it on a borrowed PC, and it wasn't anything that's my speed, but if you want a challenge, and there's no real story other than you're trying to find Tommy, who you end up fighting, and there's an evil sort of mask that's possessing him. It's a grandma simulator, I guess. I don't know. My grandma was cool.
So powers that be that developed this game, like again, therapist brain here, but you could, maybe it's because that's something. So my one of my nephews is going to school for software development, and game design is what he's interested in. Uh-huh. And I've been interested in this is not my area, so I'm having to learn more about what kind of a single player RPG can I create that builds coping skills? Like how could I make it fun to practice skills that are helpful in emotional crisis? That game could also be teaching those kinds of skills. Like, hey, this is not what you want to be like when you're 80. Right. You want to be the grandma that can execute the slut drop. You want to be the grandma that like if you're going to trip over a Roomba, why would you have a Roomba? What are you doing?
Right.
Kind of, and being thoughtful, because you would be encouraging, because that game was developed by Gen Z, and they think anyone over the age of 38 is ancient. I'm just thinking like, hey, how could you use that to encourage people to make those very small but manageable changes that stack up over time? But again, therapists. And so I that's what I'm always trying to get people to do.
It all depends on the reason why you play games, right? There is no one reason, but I mean, to me, a reason why I would play a game is fun. And what's not fun is this whole one foot in front of the other, which I understand why they did it that way. It's a grandma simulator, right? It's got weird physics and it's kind of fun in that sense. But what is it teaching? And the positive side of me says that patience is what it's teaching, because you get hit a lot. You get knocked down a lot. All these things, a cat brushes up against you. You accidentally run into a fern or something. You fall down. Maybe the patience piece of it is what it's teaching. Or maybe it's just a joke. I mean, there are a lot of games out there that people just develop as, oh, here's a silly idea. Like there's one that I just saw where someone made, and this is just a joke, obviously, but it's a coconut simulator. And it's just you, and there's a coconut. And that's what it is. You can put the camera around the coconut. It's not even a game, right? But they call it a coconut simulator. And it's just a camera that goes around it. And you've got realistic.
It's just a little app, yeah.
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 And then there's an option for realistic mode. And what happens when you click on realistic mode for this coconut simulator, the screen goes blank and it pops up a message saying, the coconut has no eyes and ears. So here it is in realistic mode. And there's just nothing. It's just a blank screen. So, I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's funny. It's funny, but it's not a game necessarily.
But also like a game. Yeah. Like a game like Farmville, besides it is a slow, sweet paced game, but because like all my kiddos are gamers. Like I've learned so much about like what foods are in season at certain times and stuff. Like there's still like an education happening there that I think Grandma Simulator could do something with. But and I know we have to get off, and I'm going to, because I'm not a gamer, I'm going to give a book recommendation. If anyone's not read the book Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is about game development and friendship as told through gaming.
Okay.
Beautiful book. Really, really love that book. Oh, like if anyone's going to make me play games, it's going to be this book. But I love books that explore friendship, maybe. Like, I mean, so many books tend to be about romantic relationships. That's why I love Project Hail Mary. That's a book about friendship. It's not about, the movie's very good as well and really keeps to the idea of the book. Like, this wasn't a guy that was brave at all. He was the opposite of that. The book is about friendship and what we connect to within ourselves in friendship. And the Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
I'll check that out.
Was fantastic.
Okay,
yeah.
That's
just a few years ago.
It's not a microcosm book. It's a different. Okay.
It's fiction. Yeah, Joe Beale's not a big fiction fan because he's autistic and fiction is lying.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's his running joke about it. But yes, it's not a microcosm published book. It's been out for a few years, and it did hit. If you're a reader, it did do pretty well. I don't remember which house it was, but it was not a weird small press that should be readily available.
Okay, I'll check that out. I'm definitely interested in that. That's interesting. Lessons you learn through video games and things is excellent. Let's wrap up the show. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being patient with my technical difficulties and being on the show.
I'm glad they weren't my fault, so it's all good.
No, totally on this end. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Faith. I was going to call you doctor again. Again.
But you caught it. Good job.
I caught it. But anyway, so thank you, Faith, and thank you, audience, for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben.
And I'm Faith. And go read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It's good if you like games.
Yes. And excellent. And also read your books, too.
If you didn't like how much I cuss, you're not going to like the books that
Well,
we're wording. It's
okay.
yeah.
There is cussing.
Yeah, let
There is
people know
cussing.
that.
And
Yeah.
just let me know,
Yeah.
and I want to let you know also that I might reverse, but people know whenever I flip the swear words in the show, they know what it is anyway. But I just do it so it doesn't get picked up as swearing. So don't be offended
No,
if I reverse your swearing. People
Okay.
know that you're swearing. But anyway, so thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast, and have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.
That should be sufficient.
You got levels? You're good? Okay.
I think I got levels, yeah. Have you been on many podcasts before?
Oh, yeah. I have not done as much just because of a lot of other family obligations, but yeah.
Gotcha. I'm going to grab my water and then we'll get started. You might hear Mango. That's just because he's a little goober.
I've got currently 3 cats in here with me.
So I'll probably hear them too at some point, I'm guessing.
Yeah, or they'll, disconnect the call or something.
So we get that as a potential.
Yeah, they're all knocked out right now, though on
Okay.
For telehealth sessions, I do have a couple of cats that are like, "You're crying, Bessie. Can I show you my butthole? Would that help?" And I'm like, that's not what they want.
No.
That's not what they're paying for.
No. Yes.